All right, we're gonna stick with the UI UX theme. Let's see. And miraculously, we are still right on time. I think the crypto gods are shining on us today. I don't know how this happened. We are right on time. So for our next talk, we're going to welcome back Zach, who you just saw on the prior panel we had. I see the name of this is In Search of the Mythical dApp User. I'm not exactly sure what Zach will be talking about, but this sounds fascinating. You know, like who are these people we're trying to target? They do feel a little bit mythical, especially with a unicorn there. So yeah, let's see what Zach's thoughts are on this. Thanks for coming back.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. It's been a whirlwind. So yeah, it's a bit of a weird talk, but this is sort of like what my specialty's been, I would say, especially for the last 12 to 18 months. I've been working with a ton of startups in the crypto space who are just starting out. They've just put their dApp together. They've started to think about user acquisition, specifically around this idea of like the first users, right? So in search of the mythical dApp user, an extremely 0-to-1 approach to finding strangers and converting them to users. So first, just a little bit about me. If you didn't see the previous panel, product and design founder, also product strategist. What is that? Strategist is really just a fancy way of saying I help teams get out of their own way, look at problems from the outside of their own head, and prioritize the most important thing and ignore the rest. So I've been working with a ton of companies, both in the Web 2 and the Web 3 space, both as a consultant as well as an intra/entrepreneur, depending on sort of what my role was in those companies. And to answer Kent's great question, like why are we even calling them mythical dApp users in the first place? We're calling them that because if you look at dApp Radar and other sort of kind of traditional examples of how growth is sort of measured and how Web 2 dApps or Web 2 apps are measured, the amount of users in the crypto space is still pretty nascent. This is from dApp Radar, monthly active users over a 30-day period. You look at this and you see that we've got about 500K is about where it tops out at, and then a pretty quick decline, right? Like especially if you go down to 36th place, you see like just kind of like 1 to 2K users, which means that we're all kind of competing for the same niche in a lot of ways. I was thinking, so I originally gave this talk in October. I was thinking, well, it's a bull run, so surely things have like actually improved since then. They actually haven't. So I took these screenshots from last night. Possibly because of the increasing fees, we've actually seen kind of a decline in monthly active users over the last 30 days, where it topped out at whatever it was. What was it? 400, almost 430K. Now we're looking at 340K as the top user, with a pretty radical decline in users 2, 3, and 4. So again, like it's not necessarily it's a growing space, but there's still a lot of room to grow. And that's partly why I really love working in this space. It's kind of cool that I'm coming on right after Rick. He said this, I think, back in November. There are only 30 ERC20 contracts that have more than 50 daily active addresses interacting with them. This goes to show how early Ethereum is. I think there's really, however way you measure it, we're still really early in the space. And we're still kind of thinking in like these sort of like 0 to 1, 1 to 10 sort of terms. So there's a hierarchy of growth whenever you think about user acquisition. I'm going to primarily be speaking from a user research plus biz dev perspective. Once you start graduating from there, you start thinking in terms of like marketing, sort of like scaling growth, and then finally community, which you turn your community members into the people who kind of bring more people in. I work at both ends, both on user research as well as community. And we're going to be talking kind of at this first level. So what are we covering? So I've got some assumptions. I'm assuming you've got a product. I'm assuming it works and it's ready for people to actually start using it. I'm also assuming that you've kind of hit the low-hanging fruit. And the low-hanging fruit are people that are your friends and your family. Why do you want to onboard your friends and family first before you start thinking about getting strangers onto the app? It's really simple, honestly. Like, your app is not going to be ready for prime time. However, however much you are an amazing designer, you're probably not going to be ready for prime time until you do those first initial people walking in. There's going to be some kicking the tires. You're going to discover a ton of edge cases. And so it's going to be important to get those through friends and family, because essentially your friends and family are the most generous users you are going to find. They want you to succeed. They're rooting for you. They're going to give you a lot of time in correcting a lot of these kind of early edge cases as you kind of start navigating it. And then basically, once you start doing that, you have spent a lot of time onboarding them and kind of refining it. This is not actually I know this kind of sounds like, really, really nascent sort of way to do it. But I would say even giant companies, this is how they started out. A story, kind of an anecdotal story from Slack. Look, they said that they got some of their first companies just kind of begging friends to try it out, right? And this is a company that raised 1.2 billion. They've sold for, I can't remember how many billions, but from humble beginnings, some pretty incredible things can happen. And so don't discount the friends and family method. But this is assuming you've already maxed that out. You've already gotten everybody on. You've already made those discoveries. So what we're going to be covering is how to meet people you previously didn't know, how to talk to them about what you're building, how to pitch them on giving your product a chance, and then finally how to make the most of the chances strangers take on your product. So key takeaway number one, I got 4 of these. I want you to make sure that if you don't really remember anything else, and this is a fast talk, this is about hours worth of content that I'm cramming into 15 minutes. But that's why I'm kind of talking so quickly. The first thing I want you to take away is know where your users are. There are 2 different designations: open channels and closed channels. Open channels are Reddit, Twitter, Stack Overflow, etc. This is essentially where people use their outside voice in discussions. Closed channels, Telegram and Discord and the like, these could potentially be more valuable because since they're closed, they don't have to necessarily worry about strangers or outsiders to use kind of an outside voice. They can talk in specifics that only their in-groups are necessarily understand, but it's still really, really useful. Why do, whenever we talk about finding users, why is it important to know where they are? Well, a couple of reasons. One, take quantity of conversations as a signal for overall market size. Basically, when I tell people to go find users and they say, I really can't find too many people talking about the problem that we're wanting to solve, to me, that is a first signal that maybe the problem that you're wanting to solve isn't as broad or general or has a wide enough niche for your product to actually live in. So it's actually really, really useful as a way to start understanding the problem that you're solving in the first place. I would honestly encourage you to start doing this before you even write a line of code, honestly, or draw a box in Figma, whichever your discipline. You can take what is being discussed as the direction of the market. So if you find a place, it has a ton of people that you would potentially want to have as users, and they're not necessarily talking about the things that you want to solve, or you can't find really those conversations, that's a good way to think about it. Or let's say they're talking about the problem space that you're thinking about, but not necessarily in that direction. These are really interesting, important nuances that really help you kind of understand the product that you're building and how to frame it in such a way that it's going to deliver value for those users. And it's both easier and also more difficult now than pre-COVID. This really just kind of goes to show everyone is moving online. ETHDenver is online. Literally every hackathon that I have had some sort of physical presence has moved online. That means that the signal to noise ratio is a lot more difficult. So you have to be more aggressive in filtering stuff out. I'm just going to kind of rip through these. I'm going to be releasing a tweet thread as well, kind of annotating the biggest missing parts, as well as this slide deck on @zherring on Twitter. So I will kind of go through this. This, in my opinion, is definitely something that you should be watching. Cold calling for introverts. Most people who build products, who write code, are not necessarily what they would consider themselves extroverts. I am not an extrovert. I'm an introvert. And this is a fantastic discussion between Jay and Katie, user researchers and strategists for Facebook and Google, respectively, where they're kind of talking about how to find the people that you need to talk to get the insights that you need to build the amazing products that everybody are going to want to use. This is fantastic, and this is also linked in the deck. Twitter phishing, I think I really like Twitter. I'm okay at it. I'm not great at it, but I'm okay at it. And so Twitter, especially TweetDeck for me, is how I tend to observe conversations and look for strangers that I can then start turning into users. And I cover all of this in the expanded talk and the Twitter thread. Whenever you find those users, it is key to ask for advice, not a sale. So this is kind of where we get into, I would say, kind of a specialized approach that I take. I really haven't found too many other people that do it, besides one book that I recommend in the appendix. I'll cover that in a bit. But essentially what I'm recommending people do is double dip with user interviews and business development. What does that look like? So let's say that I was wanting to build something that was kind of an NFT onboarding experience. It took me literally 30 seconds to find someone on Twitter who was publicly complaining about a terrible NFT onboarding experience. The temptation, whenever you start thinking of that 0 to 1, like beginning of customer acquisition sort of hustle, is to just start spamming your Twitter, spamming your links. This is actually the wrong move. Why is it the wrong move? For a couple of reasons. So like, one, people don't like spamming. Two, and I think this is more important, is that insights are much more important than payments right now. The first users that you're going to onboard may be getting it for free, right? You may be like giving them kind of like a free beta. It's much more important for them to start using your product and create an open channel to where they can start expressing their asks, their interests, etc. And so like essentially when you start reaching out, you don't want to spam your link. You want to start with empathy, and then you want to start with advice. When you ask for advice, people are actually amazingly generous in how they're thinking about the problem. At this point in your product's lifecycle, insights is way more important than payments. Let's say someone does a one-time, like buys an NFT off of my brand new platform for $50 or even $100, right? If I don't get the experience right, they're never going to use my product again, right? Customer interviews can be anything from 5 minutes to 15 minutes. It's easy to overthink, but it really just boils down to asking questions and listening to users. So in the interview, don't make this overly academic. You're exploring the problem space from their perspective and looking for opportunities to deliver value. And this is a really rich area of study. Like I said, an hour worth of content here and like tens of hours to like continue. If I was to like give anyone an 80-20, it was someone who wanted to like start building products and they're like, what's the 80-20 as far as product design goes? I would honestly say this type of product research and co-design is the 80-20 for product design. In my opinion, I know a lot of people, we tend to think about usability tests and that sort of thing when we talk about UX design. This to me is like where you actually get most of the value because it saves you time in development. It really gives you unique insights. The thing that you're working on, the idea that you have, it's very unlikely that nobody else has had that idea. So what it comes down to is execution. Can you have unique insights that nobody else has had on the idea that you're executing on? And can you know your users better than anyone else that you're competing with? Those are really what separate the good products from the great products that actually succeed in the market. And then finally, takeaway number 3 is build relationships, then communities. Value exchange is a two-way street. Really, this boils down to doing stuff for free. Co-creating with users is actually one of the most underutilized methodologies that I've seen, both in the Web3 space as well as the Web2 space, but really just like co-building with them. Usability tests, it kind of creates a stop-start. You design something, you put it in front of users, you design something, you put it in front of users, and you like continuously do that. It's actually can speed up the process a lot by scheduling a co-creation session with some of these early users. Micro experience is another really great way to test out value that you want to deliver, especially if it's a established product that you want to test out features to. And then finally, industry reports. One of the things I really like about the Web3 space is just how deep the research goes. People who are working on side projects will write white papers around everything that they've kind of discovered. Think of these in terms of industry reports and how they can serve the people that you want to maybe like start building a beta list out of, or your first user base. These are also really, really useful. Asking for an email for a beta, it used to not it used to be a lot cheaper ask than it was previously. My inbox is an absolute mess because of all of the thousands of newsletters that have been launching. Building a beta list has actually gotten harder recently. And so you have to think about delivering value first before you start building that beta list. I think I've got 2 minutes or a minute and a half, so I'm just kind of like rip through these. Community is the new moat. This is especially true in an open source and opt-in protocol level where people can just fork your product and then go build something else. This is how you start building the community, is by actually talking to users and building responsively in terms of their needs. And then finally, be creative, iterate, and find your own strategy. Something I've noticed is when I hand out these, I guess, these playbooks around it, people start using them, and then whenever they find situations that don't necessarily apply to their specific use case, they kind of stop. This is not a copy and paste activity. You can't build something unique by just copy and pasting user acquisition anywhere than you can build revolutionary tech by copy pasting from Stack Overflow. Be creative and solve things. This is also linked. I'm just going to rip through this. This isn't the endpoint. These are kind of the first steps. Like I said, 0 to 1, 1 to 10. This is where we start thinking in those terms. And then finally, takeaways. Know where your users are, ask for advice on how to sale, create value for people, and then build relationships and then communities. On my further reading, I basically have like kind of a list of like user research and biz dev, about marketing, and then community building. These are all links that I found really, really helpful. And again, thank you. I'm about to drop a giant Twitter thread about everything I didn't get to talk to in this, as well as links to an expanded video and this deck of all, I think, like 75 slides. So again, thank you all so much for your time.
Awesome, Zach. Thank you. It's great to hear you kind of run through and share all that value that you've built over so many years working on these problems and helping teams solve them. So thanks for sharing all that.
Happy to, and thanks again, everybody, for the opportunity. I love speaking at ETHDenver.
All right.